What's up, everyone? Welcome to this day in Philly sports history for May 31st, 2024. I'm your host, Jim Montgomery. Welcome to a feel-good Friday edition of the podcast and the end of May edition. Seems like this month flew by, but we had a lot of fun, especially during the It's a Family Affair. The Phillies had a pretty good month themselves. The other teams, well, we'll get into that in a little bit. But as always, let's start with a recap of yesterday's question of the day. I asked you, should the Sixers begin to entertain trade offers for Joel Embiid? Pretty split on this one. 55% of you said yes, 45% said no. And I will say those that said yes were kind of like in the same sort of mindset. It wasn't like, oh, let's get Joe out of here, but quite a few people said, why the hell not? It's not, what we're doing is not working. The other good chunk of responses were, hey, as long as it makes sense and it's not going to put us behind. And I hate to admit it, I don't think they should actively trade him. I'm a huge Joe fan, always have been, but they're sort of where, I don't want to say they're in purgatory yet, because to me, purgatory was like that 7-8 seed, 9-10, just out of it, not necessarily having a shot at it. Basically where they were pre-process with Drew Holiday and what was the other guy's name? I forget, but you know, like right after the Andrew Bynum fiasco and everything like that, they're kind of in a different type of purgatory, though. They're sort of in that 3 through 5, 6 range in the East where they have a shot. They just can't get over the hump. And, of course, like I've been mentioning, this is the worst free agent year to have a ton of cap space for free agency. So I think instead of focusing on trying to sign an old, aging vet that maybe doesn't have it, it's worth exploring anyway. I don't necessarily say we should actively trade, but start stockpiling, like do the process 2.0, but do it in a different way than what Sam Hinkie did. But here we are. As always, thanks for participating in the question of the day. There'll be another question later in the show. 267-495-8531. That is the number to the Back to the Future voice and text line. Text me, leave a voicemail. Let me know what's on your mind. Anything Philly sports related or life related for that matter. Let's stick with the Sixers, though, because I told you this week a lot of the Jimmy Butler trade rumors were spiraling out of control. The Sixers were ready to offer him the max contract if it didn't work out in Miami. Well, two things on that, and one is apparently now Jimmy Butler does not want to leave Miami. He'd rather stay, try to win a championship like Bosh, Wade, LeBron James did. And then the other thing is the Sixers don't necessarily have a ton to offer. I feel like they have a ton of draft capital, but I mean, they don't have the players under contract unless it would be a sign and trade. But I don't even know at that point if there's anybody that they'd have that would be a good sign and trade. I wouldn't mind bringing Melton back if the price is right. I wouldn't mind bringing Oubre back if that's the case. But it's just it's the worst possible end, I guess, if this is the end of the process. We're kind of back to where we were, where we had the top 3 pick and there was nobody in the draft. We have all this cap space now and nobody to spend it on. So hopefully they can work something out where they can get creative, where maybe they don't sign guys to max deals or long-term deals, but we'll see. But it does come down to Joe, and I do think you got to extend Maxey, and I think you build around Maxey, but I have never gone into an offseason like this where I said, well, it's worth entertaining the offers if they're out there. And again, I wouldn't do it for pennies on the dollar like they did with James Harden. But, I mean, see what you can get. But it's frustrating, especially because I will say, earlier in the week, I was like, I'm not going to watch the NBA Finals, but I am kind of interested now to see Dallas versus the Celtics. I would love to see the Mavs. I'm not a big Kyrie guy, but I would love to see Kyrie come back and stick it to the Celtics. And really, I just would love to see the Celtics choke and just not win. But that's a whole other issue for another show. But again, let me know your thoughts on that. I know people were pretty vocal about that, and I don't want people making a bigger deal out of this. It wasn't like they were like, "Oh, we got to trade you." It was, why not? What we've been doing, and I think it was Edison said, or Edison or Einstein, I forget which one. But the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. Maybe it's time to switch it up, is all I'm saying. Check out my boys over at the Clashing Conferences podcast for more NBA playoff fixes. Anywhere you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. They're doing a great job over there. A couple quick housekeeping notes. We are entering June. As I've been mentioning, it is the Ultimate Philly Sports Nickname Tournament kicking off on June 24th. So super excited for that. 4 regions, 64 nicknames. We're going to do 2 matchups a day leading up to the championship on July 25th. You, the listeners of This Day in Philly Sports History, get to make the vote. Who has the best nickname? We're finalizing some of the rankings and everything. I did step away from the list because I felt like every day I was micro into it, and I'm like, all right, let me take a step back. I'm going to look at it this weekend and kind of see where we're at and make some adjustments. I do think the top 8 seeds are pretty solid and pretty set. But you will be able to find out who made the tournament and where they're seated on June 21st. That will be our Selection Friday show. Looking forward to that as well. And then you have the entire weekend leading up to the tournament to rip me for who got snubbed, who should have been in, who's underseeded, who's overseeded. But all that's coming June 24th. Tell your friends, spread the word, tell your family. We had a lot of fun last year with the Lovable Loser tournament. So this one, we're kicking it up a notch. And I'm very, if you can't tell, I'm very excited about it. I'm like, it's just had so much fun compiling the list and doing the research on it and talking with some people and the guys on the selection committee. Guys on the selection committee being my wife, but I digress. But looking forward to that. Best way, like I said, subscribe to the YouTube channel, Jimbo_Mont. Tell your friends. Let's get the subscriber count up. Leave comments, leave reviews if you're on Apple Podcasts. All of that stuff helps the algorithm out. You can also hit me up on social media because you're going to be able to vote on there as well. Twitter and TikTok at Jimbo_Mont. On Instagram at PhillyJimbo. Let's do that. I'm on Facebook too if you want to find me on Facebook. But really, really looking forward to that. I've also been mentioning the Philadelphia Sports Hall of Fame tickets for the induction ceremony this year in November. All of that information is in the description. And if you do want to be a sponsor or have something to donate for the silent auction, hit me up for that as well. All right, Phillies back in action, back home from the West Coast. Thank God. They're home tonight against the Cardinals. That's why I'm wearing my Philly Connect shirt from Philly Goat. Then we'll be wearing those jerseys tonight. Nola's on the mound, and they've been pretty good in Nola's last couple starts, and Mikolas is on the mound for the Cardinals, and the Phillies usually hit him pretty well. Usually it takes them an inning or two to get to him, but they do get to him. So hopefully we're starting a new winning streak now that we're back home. Braves lost last night, so they're going into the weekend now with a 6.5 game lead. Love to see that thing expand, get some breathing room. I remember in '93. They had such a big lead that when they went through sort of that slump in the summer, which I believe was on when they were out on the West Coast, but I could be wrong. They were able to kind of relax and rest on that big cushion they had. So can't understate the importance of picking up games whenever you can, especially when the Braves have not been playing their best recently. So take advantage, expand that lead, and let's get a double-digit lead heading into June. One last thing I did want to mention that I missed the other night and I thought was hilarious, or the other day, was when the benches cleared out in San Francisco. it was Pat Burrell was leading the charge and started the shoving and everything, which was pretty funny. Good to see Pat the Bat, which where does Pat the Bat fit on our nickname tournament? We'll find out. But yeah, good old Pat leading the charge, starting some shoving and all of that good stuff out there. All right, I mentioned the Philly Connect shirt from Philly Goat. They have that. They have you covered. They have good hats. They have shirts, jerseys, whatever you want. Go check them out. This is the one I went with. It mostly closely resembles. And again, I wish this was the lettering that the Phillies use, but it is what it is. The shoes, I've gotten so many compliments on the shoes this week between the Girl Scouts thing, the work events, the parties and barbecues last weekend. Check out these canvas loafers. I'm telling you. And I will, the fans are amazing, the Fanatic ones, but I will say I thought the Cape Mays were going to be my go-to. But like I said, I got the Schmitties, which are the maroon and powder blue, and they seem to match everything. I don't know if it's just my wardrobe or whether they're that versatile, but check out the Schmitties. I'm telling you, and they're comfortable. Like, I can't understate or overstate that enough. They're comfortable. Like, they're much better than Hey Dudes, which I have a pair of Hey Dudes too, and I'd much rather wear the Philly Goat shoes. So go check out Philly Goat. Use the promo code Jim Montgomery for 10% off your order. All one word. And buying stuff off of Philly Goat also helps the podcast grow as well. So go buy some stuff off of Philly Goat. Use the promo code Jim Montgomery to take 10% off. 10%, not 10%. 10% off. It's Friday. I'm ready. It's been a long week. But Jim Montgomery to take 10% off at phillygoat.com. All right. And I meant to mention this yesterday, and I completely just got so wrapped up in the Joel Embiid and everything. But the Negro Leagues, they've been working hard, the Major League Baseball, and I believe the guy's name is Sean Foreman from baseballreference.com. They've been working very hard to do the research and as part of like an initiative sponsored by Major League Baseball to get the Negro League stats to count as official Major League stats, which if you remember the other day, I had mentioned the first quote-unquote Major League night game, but I said it was for the American League because, or the National League, because what happened is now that a lot of those Negro Leagues are considered major leagues, they were playing night games 5-6 years before. And there's a lot of, I don't want to say controversy, but there's a lot of people out there that are questioning because Josh Gibson overtook Ty Cobb on a few different stats. I believe career batting average was the biggest one. And just about the amount of at-bats and the amount of games. And when I went to the roundtable, when I saw the illegal part exhibit over in Jersey, one of my takeaways was that there's not good records for the Negro Leagues. And I mean, they're still adding and finding things from the for major leagues too, just because the stats and the way things were tracked were different. But like a lot of those things are those numbers are going to grow, and I'm all for it. I think it's a great thing for the game because I grew up in a time when people started to talk more, like everything was Jackie Robinson, but we started to do some more research, like just being curious, reading books. I remember because there was no internet, and learning about guys like Josh Gibson and Satchel Paige and some of the big name Negro Leagues. And now that I'm older and have done more research, there's a lot of damn good players that played in the Negro Leagues that would have dominated in the American or the major leagues. And it was funny, one of the stories that came out when I went to the roundtable discussion for that exhibit was that there were guys that in exhibitions against the major league teams that dominated. There was a guy that outplayed Babe Ruth in a 3-game series hands down when he was on the Yankees. It was like the 27-28, like the Murderers Row Yankees. And I can't remember which player it was, but he far outplayed him. The pitchers were able to hold Babe Ruth in check, but they just never had the shot to play. So it was sort of like, so for me, getting those players the recognition they deserve, I'm all for it, especially because baseball is such a numbers-driven game. And I think you need to have the whole story in there because these were damn good players who just didn't have the shot to get into the major leagues and show on a national scale or more widespread scale, I should say, what their ability level were. I mean, Satchel Paige pitched till he was like 50. And they don't even know if he was 50. He might have been older than that. He didn't know how old he was. So it's definitely a good thing for me, and it's only going to get better as more research is done. I know, and I'll wrap up with this. One of the things that the issues they ran into were like the cities on the East Coast, like Philly and New York. They would send the Inquirer would send somebody out to cover these games, so there was some sort of record. But some of the towns in the Midwest, they didn't care, so it was harder to play. So that's why there's such unevenness with numbers of games in the season. And that's a lot of those numbers are like the quote unquote official stats, and they don't include some of the exhibitions that they did play against the major league teams. So I love it. Kudos to Josh Gibson. And I'm hopefully this is going to continue to grow, and we're going to be able to give these players the recognition that they truly deserve. All right, Flyers update. No Mish Golf news yet. But on a positive note, Oliver Bonk and Dennis Barkey have been playing outstanding for the London Knights in the Canadian Hockey League Championships, the Memorial Cup. They've been dominating. They have the Knights playing in the championship. So good to see the next generation, hopefully maybe even next year, playing and playing at a high level. I didn't know much about the Memorial Cup, so I did a little research. Apparently, this is sort of the Stanley Cup of Canada, but because of all the different leagues that participate in it, it's way more difficult to win than the Stanley Cup. So the fact that they are playing at such a high level in this tournament bodes well for the future of the Flyers. Eagles concluded their OTA mini camps yesterday. Next week will be the mandatory mini camp. Some of the players were made available to the media. I was able to listen to a few of the interviews and some of my takeaways. Jordan Davis said he's playing at 350, which is bizarre because he said he's down a lot of weight. So who knows how much he weighed? Like I think he might have been closer to 400 pounds last year, which would explain why he did not play that well down the stretch. Says he feels better, much better than he did last year, which is good because he's one of the keys that we need to have step up. One thing he said, too, that I didn't see many people talking about on social media and the recaps was the biggest difference between this year and last year's Vic Fangio is no bullshit, which I can kind of see that Desai sort of being his first year and not really knowing what's going on. But the fact that Fangio is no bullshit, and the fact that I think what's going to be lost in this is he rubbed people the wrong way in Miami, I guess. Because of what he wanted. But you have these young guys in Philly that played for Georgia, that played for the SEC schools, that are used to guys being hard on them and the expectations being high. So I feel like a guy like Vic Fangio might actually be able to have a lot of success and help nurture these young guys into studs. So we'll see. Isaiah Rogers says he feels like he can play anywhere. Whether it be the slot, outside, which is good because they do have a ton, and we'll get more into this with the question of the day, but they have a ton of depth. So I think they're going to be looking for guys that are versatile. And the draft, I've talked a lot about this. The draft, they brought in guys who were versatile. So the fact that Isaiah Rogers is going into it saying, I'm ready to go is a good sign. Paris Campbell. And I think this is a key thing too. And he said Jalen Hurts was the first person who called him when they signed him. And they said he's been a great leader so far, and he has like a presence and an aura. So maybe it was just something that everybody started. It just like we talked a lot last year about this, where it just snowballed. Maybe the leadership thing with Jalen was a little overblown last year, and we're going to get more of the Jalen that we were used to the year we went to the Super Bowl. He also had great things to say about Nick Sirianni. He said he just had, you could tell he was going to be a head coach somewhere. How that translates on the field this year, I don't know. And then Nolan Smith was ready to take the next step. He says his shoulder is ready to go. He looked a lot bigger than what he did last year, so I don't know if he's been hitting the weights or part of the rehab. But he says he's ready to take the next step. He said there's a big learning curve in the NFL, and that last year was good for him to kind of see, and he's ready to go. So we'll see. I mean, obviously, it is May. It's mini camp. They're saying the right things. We're going to have to wait until September to see if it really translates on the field. But, I mean, overall, I'm positive with, I mean, of course, because I drink the green Kool-Aid all the time. But I'm feeling good about what I heard. But that leads to today's question of the day. There are a lot of concerns going into this season with the Eagles, and they're all well documented. But what is your biggest concern heading into this mandatory minicamp and then into training camp? Is it Jalen's progression and leadership? Is it the offensive line? Is it the defensive line? Or is it the secondary? And for me, I mean, it's tough. But I think with the secondary and the D-line, I think the fact that Fangio is who he is and these guys are young and hungry, I think that bodes well. I also think that there's so many guys that, and this is giving Howie Roseman some credit. So, I mean, this could end up biting me in the ass. This could be the sound bite that you guys play for me. But I think the law of averages says they're going to be better in the secondary because there's going to be competition. These guys are going to be hungry, ready to grab a spot. And truthfully, they cannot be any worse than they were last year. So I'm not as concerned with the secondary. Offensive line is not a concern at all. I think if Jeff Stoutland has any sort of input when they draft guys, which I believe he does, he's going to get the best and most out of them. So I'm not concerned about that. My biggest concern is Jalen, because as much as everybody's saying the right things and talent-wise and this, that, and the other, truth of the matter is we have the rookie year he played behind Wentz. Then you had his first year as a starter, which they put it together near the end, but he didn't have a great season. Took them to the playoffs. Then you had the Super Bowl year. Obviously, he wasn't Super Bowl Jalen Hurts last year, but was pretty good. I mean, he was solid, but could have definitely played better, turned the ball over a lot. Players were questioning his leadership. The team was questioning his leadership. So I don't want to say it's make or break like some people were this week, but I am concerned because, and it could be the Wentz PTSD, but what if he's not the guy we thought he was? I mean, and going into the Super Bowl year, there was a lot of questions about it, and it seems like everything broke right, and same thing happened with Wentz. So this is one of those things, and a lot of it is the PTSD, but that's my biggest concern. But tell me what your biggest concern is heading into mandatory minicamp. Is it Jalen, the offensive line, defensive line, or the secondary? 267-495-8531. Get you in on the Back to the Future voice and text line. Let me know what you are thinking. Hit me up on social media. And for the Back to the Future voice and text line, use it for anything. If you need advice, for the love of God, just call me, and I'll give you advice the best I can. But, all right, on this day, we're going back to 1983. And all I'm going to say is finally. And despite the current state of the team, on this day in 1983, the Sixers beat the Lakers 115-108 to win their third NBA championship in franchise history. Moses Malone had 24 points and 23 rebounds. Andrew Toney with 23 points and 9 assists. Dr. J had 21. Mo Cheeks had 20. The Sixers were down 9 heading into the fourth quarter and then outscored the Lakers 33-15. After losing in 77, 80, and 82, they made the trade for Moses and it finally put them over the top. Going into the playoffs, Moses called faux, saying the Sixers were going to sweep through the playoffs. They went faux 5-0. Went 12-1 for a 92% winning percentage. Only loss came Game 4 of the Eastern Conference Finals to the Bucks. The NBA record now, ironically enough, belongs to the Lakers in 2001, who went 15-1 for a 93% winning percentage. Their only loss came in Game 1 of the Finals to Allen Iverson and the Sixers. But the faux 5-0 became just a popular Philadelphia sort of whatever you want to call it, saying I wouldn't put it up there with John, but Faux Fi Faux. They put that on their championship rings. And of course, in true Philly fashion, Philly R&B jazz fusion band Pieces of a Dream did record a song called Faux Fi Faux. It peaked at number 13 on the U.S. Soul charts, and it was produced by Grover Washington Jr., who's a Philly legend. And honestly, this is the most 1980s Philly song you'll ever hear. I highly recommend it. Look at it on Spotify or Apple Music. Faux Fi Faux, Pieces of a Dream. Listen to it. You won't be disappointed because my lucky number is 454. Trust me, you got to listen to this, but it's the most 80s Philly music thing out there. But that's Faux Fi Faux from Pieces of the Dream in honor of Moses Malone predicting Faux Faux Faux, but the Sixers going Faux Fi Faux and winning the NBA championship on this day in 1983. All right, and I apologize for the singing, but trust me, my lucky number is 454. It's been catchy. I've listened to it probably about 15 times now. So check it out. 454, Pieces of a Dream. And Pieces of a Dream, hit me up with some of that royalty money since I'm getting people to listen to your music. 454. All right, finally today, it's a family affair, our last one of the month. And today our spotlight is on Ron Sutter, center for the Flyers. He was the number 4 overall pick in 1982 for the Flyers. He spent 9 years in Philly altogether, 19 total in the NHL, 137 goals, 223 assists for the Flyers. His twin brother, Rich Sutter, was drafted number 10 that same draft by the Pittsburgh Penguins. Ended up playing 3 years in Philly with Ron. Had a 13-year NHL career. Their other brother, Brian, was an all-star and played 12 years for the St. Louis Blues. Their other brother, Daryl, I feel like this is an 80s comedy bit, played 8 years with the Chicago Blackhawks. They had another brother, Dwayne, who was a 4-time Stanley Cup winner with the Islanders, played 11 years with both the Islanders and the Blackhawks. And then on top of that, the next generation, there are 3 nephews, Braden, Brody, and Brett, who played for the Carolina Hurricanes for a bit. I don't think we had the best Sutter brother, but I mean, they were all pretty damn good. So today's and our final It's a Family Affair is probably this is way bigger. This is a way bigger family tree than the Boones. But Ron Sutter, center for the Flyers, 9 years in Philly, and then his brother Rich, brother Brian, brother Daryl, brother Dwayne, nephews Braden, Brody, and Brett all also played in the NHL. I hope you had fun with the family affair. Definitely learned a lot, and it was an interesting thing for me. As I mentioned, the nickname tournament kicks off June 24th, starting tomorrow through June 23rd. We're going to take a trip down Phillies memory lane and just spotlight some random Phillies as we get into the dog days. We're almost done with NBA and NHL action, and it's going to be all Phillies until training camp. So let's have some fun with the Phillies this month leading into the nickname tournament. On this day in 1983, Moses Malone, the chairman of the boards, which is a great nickname, didn't make the tournament. Find out on June 21st. Led the Sixers to the NBA championship finally after losing 3 times in a span of 6 years. Finally put them over the top. They called Faux Faux Faux. It went Faux Fi Faux. Listen to Pieces of the Dream, Faux Fi Faux. Trust me, you will not be disappointed. Hit me up on the Back to the Future voice and text line or any of my social media to let me know your answer to the question of the day. What are you most concerned about heading into mandatory minicamp with the Eagles? Is it Jalen, the O-line, the D-line, or the secondary? 267-495-8531. Get you in. We'll have more on the Mishkov update. Hopefully the Phillies are about to start and embark on a great winning streak to expand that lead over the Braves to double digits. It's Friday. It's a feel-good Friday, the last day of May. Spread the word. Tell your friends. Buy some shirts at Philly Goat. Buy some shoes. All that other good stuff. But this has been This Day in Philly Sports History for May 31st, 2024. I'm Jim Montgomery. Go have yourselves a Friday, and until next time, I'll see you when I see you.